Tonight, we will head to Washington State, where it is now legal to smoke, buy, and grow recreational marijuana. Is this good or a bad move for any state, and can the drug ever truly be regulated? And Governor Chris Christie facing more fallout after vetoing a gun bill that would have banned ammo clips capable of holding more than 10 rounds. Governor is also getting more heat after comments he made about the bill, which have infuriated parents in Newtown and beyond. And it has been 50 years since Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Tonight, a political science professor joins RFL to discuss the groundbreaking moment in history and how far society has or has not come today. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us. And tonight, we will begin in New York, where Governor Andrew Cuomo has signed legislation making New York the 23rd state in the nation to legalize medicinal marijuana. New York's law, it is one of the more restrictive programs in the states, and under it, patients with one of only 10 diseases will be able to obtain non-smokable versions of the drug. Instead, the drug must be ingested or administered through a vaporizer or oil base. The governor, he opposed medical marijuana in the plant form, saying it could lead to greater problems.
Marijuana, on one hand, is a great substance for medical advancements. On the other hand, is illegal for distribution, and society has spent a lot of money in stopping marijuana from being distributed. It's considered a gateway drug. We spend a lot of time and energy in keeping young people away from drugs. We're dealing with a heroin epidemic now that is highly problematic.
And criminal activity surrounding marijuana apparently not a concern, though, when you go to Washington State. Today marking the first day of legal recreational marijuana sales there. Washington and Colorado, the only two states in the country to legalize marijuana for adults over the age of 21. Now, these progressive steps are a far cry from concerns that we saw years ago. I want you to take a look at this spot from the 1960s.
You wouldn't dare to do this on pot. Or this. Or this. And would you rather your pilot had just finished a joint, not a cigarette? Or your surgeon operating on your heart? Your attorney pleading your case? Your sergeant? Your dentist? Your flight leader? Your team center?
By the way, the voiceover guy, I think, by the way, is, all right, or was. Okay, I want to bring in our panel tonight here. We are joined by Adam Scavone. He's co-founder and director of the New York Cannabis Alliance. Dominic Carter, of course, political journalist and author. An old friend to the program, TJ McCormick, Republican consultant, and Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. All right, I will preface this. I hate people when they straddle the fence, but on this one, I'm conflicted. You know, we've seen a lot of social issues, most notably gay marriage, for example, that has changed, I think, with the velocity that we haven't seen other social issues change. We seemingly agree on a lot of the practical aspects, and we'll get into the dollars and cents of legalizing drugs because of the cost of prosecution and the best use of our criminal justice system in terms of who is and who isn't. So we'll get into all that. But I don't know if I'm there yet to saying legalize it, let's go the way of Colorado and Washington. And we've got different opinions certainly at the table, so we'll get into that. But I'd like to break the conversation into two parts. The first one is kind of what Governor Cuomo was saying, where he said, I'll go for medicinal, but I won't go for recreational. And in part because he points to something we've talked about at this show quite a bit, which is the epidemic. And that's the only way we can cover when we're talking about heroin. And his contention that you go legalizing marijuana, you're sending a message to not just kids and everyone, but that drugs are okay and it's a gateway to heroin. Let's start with the morality of it, and if it's a good or a bad thing, and should the state be in the business of it. Then we'll get in the second segment into the dollars and cents and the practicalities of it as well. And TJ, I wanted to start with you because you've been very upfront and transparent in this, and that you've had your own struggles. So you don't just come to this conversation as some theoretical debate. This is something you lived.
Yeah, Rich. I'm very open about the fact that I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic who doesn't drink anymore, by the grace of God. And matter of fact, in 2 days, it'll be 9 years since I've had a drink. And cheers. Thank you. I still say cheers. Thanks. And you know, I have, in all of my almost decade of sobriety and meeting people who had drug addictions, any other, I don't know anybody who went from 0 to cocaine without pot in between. I don't know anybody who went straight to crack or straight to heroin. It is absolutely a gateway drug. It is that experimental thing, and it's disturbing in that sense because it's almost without exception. And the other side, from my sober standpoint, is I've come to understand that it's not just a saying to say, look, you don't need to drink. Literally, you don't need to alter your mind. There is no moment in anybody's life other than going into surgery when they give you certain types of, medications. There is never a moment in a human being's life where it is necessary to enjoy a mind-altering.
But no one's saying you have to do it. Right. They're legalizing in 2 states the option to do so.
That's my point.
Choice.
There's never a need to, I guess, is what I'm saying.
TJ,
there is never a need.
For the prohibition of alcohol.
That is something. No, and look, I understand. Look, I just bought my wife a wonderful couple of bottles of rosé because it's summertime. I'm not averse to drinking. I'm not averse to that sort of thing. I guess my point is we already have more than a wide array. There's a fabulous selection of products out there where people can take an edge off, can do what they need to do, can accompany a meal and all those other things. Right on down to herbal stuff you can get at CVS that take the edge off of life and all that sort of thing. If you need to, if you must. There is no need, in my mind, a lot of people's mind, to introduce yet another.
Well, Adam, let me ask you, because from your perspective, and we'll get into the legislative and some of the practicals, but to TJ's point, is this a road the state should want to go down? You saw the very clear point the governor was making, saying, I'm going to go for medicinal marijuana, and he took a while to get even there, but I'm not going to the recreational. That's not the business that we ought to be in as a state. What would you say to the governor? What would you say to TJ and others who say, we don't need to go there, we don't need state sanctioning marijuana use?
Right. First of all, congratulations, TJ. Your story illustrates that there are substance abuse issues in New York, and they should be dealt with. Every substance needs to be addressed on its own terms, and marijuana, whether we like it or not, is in existence in this state. There is a cannabis market. It is currently unregulated and operated sold out of dorm rooms and apartment buildings and on stoops across the state. We're not saying that the government should endorse cannabis use or cannabis smoking, but there's a more rational and effective way to address this. Kids today, when they hear from the same person telling them that they shouldn't do cocaine and heroin and alcohol, that they also shouldn't do marijuana because it will ruin their lives, well, more than 82%, I believe, in the most recent data of high school seniors will have experience with marijuana. They will have personal experience, and if the message that they got previously that marijuana would ruin their lives doesn't come true and doesn't even come close to coming true, well, that whittles away at our credibility as a society when it comes to the other drugs that they need to.
You're not saying you want kids in high school to be able to smoke weed legally, right?
Absolutely not.
But would the argument be that if you say it's okay if you're 21, just like alcohol and everything else, the stigma now has been erased, and that, hey, if you're a senior in high school or something, they're going to look the other way, just like if a kid's got a beer, nobody wants them drinking, but if you're legal at 21, what freshman in college isn't drinking, let alone some of the kids in high school? You understand
I absolutely
the concern?
understand. I absolutely understand. And I think the policy of allowing adults who are 21 and over to consume these substances, in the case of alcohol, we allow adults to use alcohol. Kids use it anyway. I don't think kids really consider the broad state of affairs. If they can go down to the next locker and buy some marijuana from their high school marijuana dealer and those are they're inclined to try it, they're going to find a way. In the Netherlands, we have usage rates that are half of what American high school students use, and they can go to any cannabis coffee shop on the local street corner or on the main strip and buy cannabis. There very well could be a forbidden fruit effect where we make a big deal about this and say no, 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 no. And
how about you, Dom? How do you feel?
This is a very serious issue for me, and I think that I tend to agree with what you said as well as TJ, as much as I hate to admit that TJ and I agree on an issue. But in all seriousness now, with that said, my grandfather was a heroin addict in the worst possible ways. Stealing from the family, out on the street, doing everything bad that you can imagine. And I guess, if you will, I'm old school on this, because my grandmother, who raised me, who didn't have much of a formal education from Augusta, Georgia, she would say things to me like, boy, and I still remember this vividly, boy, don't you ever start with that marijuana. You saw what happened to your grandfather. If you start with marijuana, it's or sort of what TJ said, it's only a matter of time till you move up to cocaine, and then it's only a matter of time till you're a heroin addict. So I don't find I'm with the governor almost, my position. I understand the medical use of this, but socially, I'm just not with it, and I cannot support it. I see what happens in many communities in New York City when kids touch marijuana for the first time, and they're in the psychiatric ward the same day.
You know, the irony in the governor's argument against legalizing marijuana is that it acts as a gateway, and we have a heroin problem in the state, which we do. But the gateway to heroin right now is prescription pharmaceuticals, which are being overprescribed. And which, by the way, Big Pharma is one of the leading groups against the legalization of marijuana, even funding, I think it's Joe Kennedy's group based in Rhode Island that's going around and trying to dissuade people about legalizing marijuana because they fear the business repercussions of it. So, you know, it's an alternative, and I actually think it would be an alternative that would be embraced by some people who might actually, try marijuana in lieu of going to another harder drug instead of getting their edge off with cocaine or with heroin.
Because you know what it's about? It's about a disconnect. It's about a need and a desire for a disconnect. Sometimes just to let off some steam. Sometimes to address serious, deeper issues. I would suggest that for any reason that any legitimate reason that your organization or others may come to the fore and say, look, this is why. Somebody needs to unwind over here. For every joint, I could give you a yoga exercise. For every drink, I could give you a meditation or a breathing thing. You want to take the edge off, there's a million ways. And again, I'm not a teetotaler.
The comparison between alcohol and marijuana is the one that I have trouble getting past. Because if we're going to treat one of them one way and the other in a different way, I don't know how you square that circle.
I think for the simple fact that we already have one. Why do we need yet another mind-altering substance that is... And by legalizing, you are condoning.
In a free country.
Yeah.
Adults are allowed to make personal choices. It's the same thing with this as with sexual freedom, and this is a basic civil rights issue. We have 28,000 people a year put in handcuffs and arrested in New York City alone for simple marijuana possession.
And Adam, I want to pick up on that point right after the break, because there's a practical argument. We've gotten into the moral, if you will, or the question of that slippery slope that we've all talked about. Households, wherever you are, you've had a question as to where could this lead. Well, what about the aspects of the impact on the criminal justice system? What's the best way to use our money there? And then what about some of the other questions? Could this actually raise revenues for cash-strapped states? Would it be better to regulate it and acknowledge that it's there than just say, don't do drugs? We're going to talk about that and much more after this.